Hello, my name is Taya Wilson. Today's December 6th, 2022, and this is my final project for the Africana Religious Studies class, REL 225. In this project, we were asked to cover a few things, and so I want to go over that with you today and discuss how this course has impacted me. We're to answer three questions, which was how was learning about Africana religious studies impacted you the way you think about yourself? How has learning about Africana religious studies impacted the way you relate to other people? What are three ideals Africana religions have shared with you that you will now share with others? And if people were more educated about the ideals, histories, and the practices of Africana religions, how do you think our society would have to change? And I broke those into four different questions as opposed to the three because I think that each one deserved an answer to itself. So the first question was, how has learning about Africana religious studies impacted the way I think about myself? And this course has opened up my mind to a lot of different things. I Originally, when I took this class, I was taking it because I am a pastor's wife. My husband and I pastor full time for a Christian church, and I enjoy learning about religious studies. I want to know more about the Bible, about all those different things, about different impacts. So I thought, oh, this would be an easy course for me to take. This would be something that I would be interested in, especially as my first course back to return to school after 5 years. And so I thought, okay, this is a good way to get acclimated back into doing assignments, doing reading, doing everything like that. But when I started this course, I was blown away by the things that we would cover. And it just took me to another place where I was just like, I am really enjoying this. So one of the things that happened to me that as I took this class is I decided to actually open up and take religious studies as a minor because I was so excited about the things that we were covering. I was excited to learn about the different religions and to experience even more about the African history and African diaspora. And so I was just so excited. I said, oh, I got to learn more and I got to do more. So I ended up adding religious studies as a minor because this course just really blew me away. One of the areas that it did cause me to change was my positional stance on religion and healing. I think I started this class with more of a closed mind picture. I was borderline what I would call somewhat low on religious tolerance because I did have the perspectives that was taught to us about a lot of the religions that we discussed as far as, oh, that is demonic, that is satanic, this is witchcraft, this is this way. And so I was a person that was brainwashed, in regards to the different aspects of the Africana religious religions that were offered. And so one of the things that did hit me big time in this class was the ideal of healing. And I'll talk about that a little bit more. And it started to make me question now, with most folklore and indigenous religions say that healing is both spiritual and physical. How come Christianity did not? And so it caused me to start to question a few things in regards to that. And I actually dug a little deeper and got some answers. And so it made me change my thinking and my perspective that healing is not just a physical thing. It is both spiritual and physical. And so I am excited to have that change because I learned something new in regards to that. Like I said, I had the desire to learn more about different types of religion. I had also started a course in sociology of religion that had to deal with some Mormonism. And I had a friend at work who was a Jew. And so there was a couple of different things that caused me to just start asking questions and having, as what we call at work, courageous conversations with people. And so I really dug into learning more about the Rastafari and the Nation of Islam, even the Father Divine, and even witchcraft itself that some do practice. And so I wasn't shunned or scared away from it, but I was just excited to get to learn some more information about these particular studies. Another thing that came out of this was that I grew in how proud I am to be from an African descent, to be a part of that descendants from the African diaspora. And also what happened was I took on a greater fondness for the things that my ancestors have been through and how they've been able to persevere. And so it just really made me excited to be able to relate to actually being a part of such a great history and culture. Another part that also made me question is the idea of privilege and what that was. I know a lot of the discussion may be on what white privilege versus as far as in the history and heritage. But I began to actually look at, well, can Christians also have a privileged mind? Because we are the majority population for the major culture religion. And so I just began to wonder, are we privileged minded? Because that's something I would have classified myself with. And so I was excited to dig into that and kind of pick that apart. And one of the other unique things that it also made me do is to travel more. While I was taking this class, I got to travel to the St. Martin's and St. Thomas. So I got to see a little bit of the Caribbean, and it was my first time. And so as we were discussing some of this, I was like able to see it hands-on, and I was like, I want to go more and see more parts of the land and see how the culture is on the actual islands and that itself. And I got to actually go back to my summer travels to Charleston, South Carolina, and through New Orleans to actually look at like the voodoo and the Gullah Geechee. And so I just was really, really ecstatic about this class. So the second part to the first question is, how has learning about Africana religious studies impacted the way you relate to other people? And I think it's made me more courageous to have different conversations because I am more confident in the tolerance that I have for other religions. Whereas before I used to not really want to engage in religious conversations, just like, some people run from politics, some people run from religious conversations, and that was me. But this week I actually talked with a young lady at one of my women's groups, and we began to talk about the Beyonce video and how the channeling through the Ashun and the Ifa, and we talked about some other things as far as the Nation of Islam, and I actually got to sit and just have about an hour-long conversation with her, and it was so mind-blowing because of the fact that we didn't defend each other. We just actually had the discussion. And so I think this brought into being able to talk to people about all of the different aspects of our class, of the Africana Religious Studies class we're taking. Like I said, I talked to her about Ifa. I talked to her about Obe. I'm able to talk to some of the other young men by Yoruba. I can bring up conversations about what's the difference between voodoo and voodoo. Actually able to talk about where the Santeria came from and how it came into play, how the United Nations is the year that we're in the United Nations. I'm able to talk about so many different things as far as what happened with over in the Congo, just different places that I think I was a little more closed-minded about. And so this for me is important because it allows me to actually feel confident when I have these discussions with others to share their thoughts and not feel isolated or intimidated. And so I am glad I did take this. And so just the being able to actually come in and discuss, what is the Africana religious studies? What does it involve and what's in it? And for me, one of the big things was, talking about African diaspora. I didn't get to use that term before, but now I feel like, oh my goodness, I can actually use these words and know what I'm talking about. And so I'm excited about that. So in addition to those topics that we brought in from Module 1, a couple of other different things that impacted me with the way that I relate to other people is the greater awareness of what colonialism had on Africa and the African diaspora religious practice. One of the biggest awareness that jumped out to me was the fact that I thought for the longest that us in America, in the U.S. here, had got the brunt of the black slaves. And as we began to study and find out, I was like, that's not true. And so that was a new fact that I learned. And so then also learning just from how not being able to be seen as actual people from that, and how the encounter with the Catholics and coming across to over to the islands and to Brazil and to the different parts, but then going back and getting actual Africans to do that. That was all new to me. I had the viewpoint from the slave trade, but learning all of that really kind of put some pieces together. Also, how I relate to other people, it made me think about the direction of the Black church, the ring shout that we went over. I see that every Sunday when people come in and they call it the Holy Ghost dance, or they get to doing their step, or how the falling out. And you see some of the practices that actually are not necessarily a part of the Christian church, but are blended from different cultural things. And so that to me was fascinating to find out about. And I can actually talk more about like that. Oh, do you know you're actually doing this or doing that? And so kind of doing that. Also being able to just have, like I said, a open conversation on how Christianity has impacted the Black race, or the African diaspora, or Africans descendants. I think to just be open about that is such a wonderful ideal and way to express different things when I'm having conversations with people. Let me see her. Hopefully this doesn't go too fast. Oh, okay. Also making me more aware to view spiritual matters in a different way. And so when I say in a different way, just how seeing all the different religions and the different rituals and the traditions that are practiced, and how there's such an openness about spiritualism, and how I've always wondered how come, I don't see that a lot as much in, like, when you go to visit a white church or a contemporary church, and like, why is that not there? And just beginning to understand why there was a divide in the spiritual piece that was missing, and how the we as African people or Black people have been able to bridge that and bring that still into our current practices, no matter if we are Christian or whether it be Buddhist, or whether it be like Father Divine, just different ways we brought that over. And so I find that to be a good conversation with different people. The next question that we're to discuss is, what are three ideals Africana religions have shared with me that I will now share with others? Oh boy, it's a lot. So I'll start out with the oral versus the written traditions, and how that impacted me, because I think that's where we come with the term folklore. So there's more than just the African religions that have the folklore. Of course, you have most indigenous with like the Native Americans. You even have the Mayans, the Aztecans. There's a lot of those that just share orally. I even think from my Bible perspective, how the Hebrew started with oral tradition, and then eventually it got written down. And so this was very, very key to me, especially in this last, what was it, metaphysics, where we were talking with the professor, I think her name is Anthea, from the University of Pennsylvania. And how she said, even in the Black church, it took so long because, we were not shamed, but punished to actually learn to read. And so even in that, there was such an oral tradition that took place, and how important it is, but how a lot of our culture is missing that now in the modern time. And so I thought that to be very fascinating piece. And then so I brought that in with the module 2, with that being a form of religious racism, that because it wasn't written, a lot of it was just like symbols and things, and just shared from one generation to the other, how it got shunned and shut down by being misconstrued and misunderstood. And so that hurt my heart. And so to me, what's as important is being able to share their stories orally as opposed to just written. I even think about today, I had Bible study, and I was talking to a 2-year-old. You can't share written with a 2-year-old. You have to be able to share orally. And so those are important pieces, and I think that was brought out in that particular part. So also I enjoyed finding out about the other things that took place as far as in regards to religious racism, from Daniel Boaz's The Banning of the Black Gods, and being able to use the term anti-blackness. I mean, I heard it, but I didn't really understand what it was. And just all the epistemic, that was new to me, just different things like that. And so I felt like, wow, this is really changing the way that I think, that the way that I see sharing the different traditions and the different religions that we encounter. And so that was important for me. This next piece that I think would be one of the things that I would share with others is just the sacredness and spirituality and religion, one of the things that was brought up is, and part of the religious racism is how in Brazil they were coming in, tearing up the temples, and even in the movie Wakanda, I saw how they were the first Wakanda, not the second one. They take the mask and put it in a museum, and or they take a pot and put it in the museum, and those are sacred items, and they're literally being put away and not being used for the purpose that they're designed for. And so that is how the sacredness is being taken away from those things that are important. And I know for me, if someone were to do that in regards to the things that I love with Christianity, I would be upset and frustrated. So I can understand why there would be such a feeling of blatant disrespect. And so that's an ideal that I would bring forth. Another ideal that I would also bring is just the binary code. Now, okay, the effect that the Africana religions had on the world making in Module 5. Oh my goodness, that was mind blowing. I think this is a piece that the binary code. I was so shocked to see, and it was so funny because I was actually watching a documentary with my husband about the Namor from Wakanda, the second one, and it was talking about the pyramids that was being built and how they were similar to the Egyptian ones. And I was just so, it made me start to look at, okay, well, where's the binary code that's being used in Central America as opposed to in Africa, or and just how that is impacted. And so that left a pretty big mark on me. And then that movie that or the show that Zainab Badawi did, where she was showing how even there are Jews in Morocco, and how St. Mark started the church in Ethiopia, and how the other church in Egypt and Sudan. And so it just began me seeing how the other religions had affected also Africa, and different impacts. And so I enjoyed having that particular discussion, and with so many people. I discussed it with my husband, I discussed it with my daughter, and so I was excited to talk about the new things that I was learning from this class. The next question is, if people were more educated about the ideals and histories and practices of Africana religious studies, how do I think our society would change? This one to me was a little more difficult, and I took a little more personal because I had to start thinking about different things, such as the impact that even sitting in this class has had for me. And so I feel like if people were open to more discussions about it and different conversation about it, we would be able to have classes like this without offense being taken or judgment being taken. And we'd be able to have open, honest, healing conversations. So this is a picture that I took from, it's supposed to be reflective of like Wakanda, when T'Challa went to the ancestral plane. And so one of the things with the sacred healing module, in module 4, that we were discussing was things like divination and mystical powers and magic and conjuring and healing roots. And this module really, really stuck out to me because, like I said, it changed how I began to even see healing from my Bible perspective. And I began to equate it that healing is both physical and spiritual, but how we can close it out so much because we don't want to engage in the spiritual aspect. Um, and there are different forms of the spiritual aspect, with the ancestors being one, Holy Spirit and Christianity being another, even divination. I like how Dr. Shore said the intuitive side being the spiritual side. And so I really sat with this for a while, and I still been sitting with this because it's necessary. I take medications to deal with some health issues, and it made me reflect on the herbs that can be used instead of the pharmaceuticals. And so I just began to see things differently. I also saw colorism was something that was brought up in this particular module about the different colors of black and how even we still deal with that today. It reminded me of the movie School Days with the lighter and the darker. And so there was so much that was discussed in this particular module that I was just like, oh, I could go on and on about this. For a long time. And so this was one model that particularly really, I think if we began to have open and honest discussions about it, we would grow in our knowledge and understanding of each other. But we'd also learn to interact better. Excuse me. And the other one I looked at was the module 6, which was the metaphysical. This was eye-opening for me because I didn't know there were so many different classifications to this. Like, I didn't know anything about the Moorish science temple. I didn't even know about Black Buddhists. I didn't really know that even you can classify Black Christianity under this. So the way that this was broken down into the different pieces was very enlightening for me. I use enlightening because of the hair, but I enjoyed it and learning about the different things. I really started to get off on a different case about Hebrew Israelite because I thought, oh, that'll fall in there too. And just looking at it in that regards. So I learned a lot from that. One of the things that I do think that if we had discussions about the ideals and histories and practices of African religions, I think we would end up with more of the Black metaphysic different religions, because as Black people search for their inheritance, as they search for where do I belong, and they try to answer those questions about what is the history or what should they be doing, I think you would find a lot more religions being developed under that way, encompassing senses and things like that, and there might be more of an acceptance in regards to that, and we would see less hostility as far as viewing some of the like Nation of Islam or Hebrew Israelite or anything like that in a volatile way would be my hope for that. And, having discussions in regards to that. So that would be something that would be good. I think the other piece that having these discussions would bring up about reparations. And I really enjoyed this reparation piece. I didn't even know they were having meetings in front of Congress for the HR 40 with Ta-Nehisi Coates or anything like that. So I didn't even know that was taking place, and it has actually triggered me to find out more about it, and so how I can participate and see what I can contribute. But also, I think the 5-step rubric for reparations was very enlightening, as far as one, stop doing it, and then guarantee you that it won't happen again? Is it or is it not about economics? Those conversations to me are what need to be had, and I don't know that it's going to happen within this lifetime. When I think about the type of slavery that we encounter because of the transatlantic slave period, um, relatively from the 1600s to now, it's only been 400, 500 years at the most. Um, it, the world is very slow to change. So I just think that we have to keep having the discussions is a big thing, and eventually we will come to some agreement. Economically, I don't know how we would be able to separate what's due to blacks and the descendants to do that. I think it would change our system, economic system globally. And so there has to be some way to be able to say, we apologize and we will not do this again. And how can we make things better? So I think conversations is the biggest piece that needs to come out of the reparations, because from the conversations we can begin to see what type of resolutions, if any, can be made. And so I was excited about that. I agreed wholeheartedly with Dr. Sewer on her statements. And so I really enjoyed the whole presentation for Module 7. And so that was, I was just mind boggling, like, oh, this class to me was worth it. I would recommend it to anyone that is interested in these topics, anybody who is tapping their foot just to learn something new, because the way that Dr. Alhassan presented it was just what I needed. It was right on the spot. We talked about so many different things that are relevant now. And so I just look forward to my next class, and I hope that I have as good a time with that topic. And thank you, and have a good night.